The Haunted Carnival. The group of teenagers, Emma, Ryan, Lisa, and Jake, stood frozen near the entrance, the laughter and music from the rides behind them now silent, replaced by the occasional creak of rusted machinery and the whisper of the wind. They had barely escaped the Ferris wheel, its iron cage nearly becoming their tomb as it had spun uncontrollably, showing them horrifying visions of the carnival's dark past. Now their hearts pounded in their chests and their eyes darted around, searching for any sign of life, or worse, the figures they had glimpsed watching them from the shadows. "We need to get out of here," Emma whispered, her voice shaky but firm. She wiped the sweat from her brow, though her hands trembled. "That thing, it wasn't just an accident. It was like the carnival itself was trying to kill us." Lisa nodded, her face pale. "But how do we leave? The gates are locked." Ryan, the most skeptical of the group, still tried to remain calm. "We just need to find another way out. Maybe there's a side entrance or something." But Jake, who had been quiet since the Ferris wheel incident, finally spoke, his voice low and almost absent. "What if we're not supposed to leave? What if it wants us here?" His words hung in the air, chilling them to the bone. None of them wanted to admit it, but deep down they knew something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just an abandoned carnival. It was alive. It was waiting. Suddenly, the distant clinking of chains echoed through the empty lot. The sound seemed to reverberate off the crumbling stalls and dilapidated tents, growing louder with every passing second. Emma took a step back, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" Before anyone could respond, a loud clang pierced the night, and the ground beneath them trembled. The group turned toward the source of the noise, only to see the once locked gates of the haunted house creak open. A long, narrow corridor stretched out before them, lit by flickering lights that cast strange, shifting shadows on the walls. "I'm not going in there," Lisa muttered, backing away. "No way." But as they hesitated, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them. Slowly they turned. There, at the far end of the carnival grounds, a tall figure stood. Its outline was distorted in the moonlight, but it wore the unmistakable garb of an old carnival ringmaster. A wide-brimmed hat covered its head, and its arms were outstretched as if beckoning them to come closer. Jake's voice cracked. "Run!" They sprinted toward the haunted house, their only refuge from the figure creeping closer behind them. The moment they crossed the threshold, the doors slammed shut with a force that shook the walls, sealing them inside. The inside of the haunted house was worse than they could have imagined. It wasn't just a fun house of mirrors or cobweb-covered corridors. The air was thick with the smell of damp rot, and the walls were lined with grotesque portraits of distorted faces. Faces that seemed to shift and change as they passed. A narrow staircase spiraled downward into a basement that none of them wanted to enter. But the sound of creaking footsteps above them reminded them they had no choice. One by one they descended the staircase, the steps groaning beneath their weight. Each step felt like walking into the unknown, the darkness swallowing them whole. At the bottom, a long, narrow hallway stretched out, barely lit by dim, flickering bulbs. The walls seemed to pulse as though they were alive, and strange whispers echoed from every direction. "What is this place?" Ryan muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Emma shook her head, her pulse racing as she strained to hear the whispers. They weren't just random sounds. They were voices, indistinct but close, too close. And they were calling their names. Suddenly, one of the light bulbs shattered, plunging them into near darkness. The faint remaining glow illuminated a large, rusted door at the end of the hallway. Unlike the other doors they had passed, this one was covered in claw marks, as if something had tried to tear its way out, or in. Lisa's hands shook as she reached for the door handle, but Emma stopped her, her eyes wide with terror. "Wait, do you hear that?" They all paused. From behind the door a low, guttural growl echoed. It was faint at first, but then it grew louder, more feral. Something big was behind that door. "We have to turn back," Emma said, pulling Lisa away. "We can't go in there." But just as they were about to retreat, the door began to shake violently. The growling became louder, and the claw marks seemed to deepen before their very eyes, as if whatever was behind the door was desperate to escape. A loud thud came from behind them. The sound of the footsteps they had heard earlier was back, only this time they weren't slow. They were fast, running toward them. Ryan swore under his breath. "We're trapped." The decision was made for them. The door to the basement burst open, revealing the shadowy figure from before, the Ringmaster. His face was twisted into a grotesque grin, his eyes glowing a sickly yellow. With a wave of his hand, the door behind them, the one with the growling, swung open. And from the darkness something emerged. A creature, twisted and malformed, crawled out, its body long and sinewy, with too many limbs and eyes that reflected the flickering light. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its skeletal frame, and it moved with unnatural speed toward the group. Screams filled the basement as the creature lunged, its jagged claws slashing through the air. Emma, Jake, and Lisa dove to the side, narrowly avoiding its attack, while Ryan tried to hold it off with a metal pipe he had found. The creature screeched, its eyes locking onto Ryan as it swung again, this time catching his arm. Blood splattered the walls, and Ryan collapsed to the ground, clutching his arm in pain. The creature reared back, preparing to strike again, when suddenly a loud carnival bell rang out, echoing through the house. The creature paused, its body trembling. It let out a shriek before scurrying back into the darkness, leaving the group in stunned silence. The Ringmaster, still grinning, tipped his hat and spoke for the first time. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Welcome to the show." With a wave of his hand, the walls of the basement began to close in, the air around them growing colder. The ground shook as the carnival's evil presence tightened its grip. The nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. And as the group realized with growing horror, there was no escape. Not from this carnival. Not from him. The walls of the basement seemed to pulse and close in as the carnival's twisted reality engulfed them. The grotesque grin of the ringmaster lingered in the dim light, his eyes glowing with an eerie satisfaction. The bell from the carnival's center echoed again, a chilling reminder that this night was far from over. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing. "There's got to be a way out of this," she muttered, staring at the darkened hallway they had come from. But her hope was fading. Ryan lay on the ground, bleeding from the creature's attack, and Lisa's breath was ragged, her face pale with fear. Jake's eyes darted between the ringmaster and the shrinking room. Suddenly, the ringmaster raised his hand and the ground beneath them shifted. The floor began to break apart, revealing a vast, swirling pit of darkness below them. A deep, menacing hum vibrated through the air, as if the carnival itself was alive and hungry. Suddenly, the ringmaster raised his hand and the ground beneath them shifted. The floor began to break apart, revealing a vast, swirling pit of darkness below them. A deep, menacing hum vibrated through the air, as if the carnival itself was alive and hungry. "What is this place?" Jake shouted, pulling Ryan to his feet. "This," the ringmaster said with a cold chuckle, "is the heart of the carnival. And now you're all part of the show." Without warning, the ringmaster snapped his fingers and the room's walls transformed. The portraits of distorted faces on the walls began to twist and contort even further, their mouths opening wide as if screaming silently. The dim lights flickered and shadows danced around them, taking shape, shadows of past visitors who had been lost to the carnival's grip. Emma took a step back, her voice trembling. "We're not going to make it out of here, are we?" "No," the ringmaster said, his grin growing wider. "But the carnival has one last trick up its sleeve. You've all been very entertaining, and for that I'll give you a choice." His hand reached into his coat, and when he pulled it out, there were 4 tarnished silver tickets in his palm. He extended them toward the group. "One of you gets to leave, but only one." The silence in the room was suffocating. The group exchanged glances, their hearts sinking at the cruel proposition. "No," Lisa said, her voice weak but defiant. "We're not playing your game. We're all getting out of here. Together." The ringmaster's grin faltered for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "Is that so?" he whispered, his voice venomous. The carnival around them seemed to groan in protest as the darkness beneath their feet began to rise, tendrils of shadow creeping closer to their legs. Ryan, clutching his injured arm, looked at the others. His face was pale and his breathing was labored. "He's not bluffing," Ryan said quietly. "If we don't choose, none of us will make it." Jake's jaw tightened. "We can't sacrifice one of us. There's got to be another way." But Emma's mind was racing. She looked down at the silver tickets, at the swirling darkness, and then back at the ringmaster. His eyes glistened with the promise of death. And then it hit her. The carnival was a game. A twisted, horrifying game, but a game nonetheless. And every game had rules. Every game had a cheat. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and stepped forward. I'll take the tickets, she said, reaching for them. The ringmaster's grin returned, but this time it was different, almost triumphant. He handed her the 4 silver tickets, and as her fingers closed around them, she felt a jolt of cold shoot through her body. "What are you doing?" Lisa asked, panicked. Emma didn't answer. Instead, she stared down at the tickets, feeling the weight of their meaning. The cold radiating from them was almost unbearable, but then she smiled. A soft, knowing smile. She looked up at the ringmaster, her eyes fierce. "You said only one of us can leave. But you never said we had to choose which one, did you?" The ringmaster's grin faltered again, his eyes narrowing. "What are you?" "I choose myself," Emma said, her voice strong and clear. "And I choose them." She extended the tickets, pressing one into Ryan's hand, one into Jake's, and the last into Lisa's. For a brief moment the room was silent. The shadows stopped moving, the carnival itself seemed to hold its breath. The ringmaster's face twisted in confusion. "You can't," he began, but Emma cut him off. "You said we get to choose. I choose all of us." The silver tickets in their hands began to glow, faint at first, then brighter and brighter until the light consumed the entire room. The growling from the darkness below grew louder, but the light was too strong, pushing the shadows back, burning away the carnival's evil. "No!" the ringmaster screamed, his voice filled with fury. "That's not how it works." But the light intensified, and the walls of the haunted house began to collapse. The portraits melted away, the grotesque faces disappearing into the void. The swirling pit beneath their feet faded, and the shadows retreated into the night. Emma, Ryan, Lisa, and Jake stood together, their hands still gripping the glowing tickets as the world around them shifted. The carnival's twisted reality began to unravel, its power fading as the light consumed it. And then, just like that, they were standing outside. The carnival was gone. The rides, the tents, the eerie laughter. It had all vanished. The moon still hung low in the sky, but the night was calm now, peaceful. They stood in stunned silence, trying to comprehend what had just happened. We're out," Ryan whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. Lisa let out a shaky laugh. "I can't believe it." Jake turned to Emma, his eyes wide. "How did you know that would work?" Emma smiled faintly, her heart still racing. "I didn't. But I figured, sometimes the only way to win a rigged game is to break the rules." As they walked away from the empty lot, they could still feel the weight of the carnival's lingering presence. But they had beaten it. They had survived. And behind them, in the distance, the faint sound of a carnival bell echoed one last time, before fading into the night forever. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories that help you improve your English.